How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Here with my one and only trusty, couldn't do it without him, co-host Jeremy Cohen, looking fashionable in a shirt. If you're listening, I have to describe this to you. The color of the collar on his shirt kind of matches his hair a little bit.
A little bit. I think it's like a burgundy.
How would you define your hair color?
I think a more copper auburn type.
Copper.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, when I was a kid, it was a lot.
Potting with an aristocrat. Okay.
Well,
Sorry.
That's okay. I mean, listen, I try to appeal to the bourgeoisie every now and then. But as a member of the aristocracy, I do my best to stay above it all. This is my hair was a lot brighter when I was a kid. And because I don't go outside as much.
Was it really?
Yeah, for sure. It gets darker, especially in the winter. And, I mean, like if you look at my complexion, you can see why I don't go out and why the sun then doesn't hit me as much. So it just gets darker as time goes on. Hopefully I keep it. That's the end goal, right? I mean, you've seen my daughter's hair color. We've been praying for years that she keeps that hair color. Yeah, it's great.
It's like a nice strawberry blonde, but she was like more red when she was okay. For anybody who's still listening, we are actually going to have some Knicks talk here. First and foremost, before we get to the games, I do want to say what I'm wearing. Shout out to Patrick Ewing. Got my NBA Jam shirt with him and Starks on here.
Oh, I was going to say, who's the guy next to Starks?
So can we talk about this for a second?
I feel like we can't not talk about it. Yeah.
I get to these. So first, let me just say, congratulations. The dude won the Big East as coach of Georgetown. Like, fantastic job. Like, kudos to you. Cool to win it in the Garden, the whole thing. There are times when shit happens in Knicks land that is very Knicksy, and it's very clear that there are two takes. There is the take that you are like, am I defending James Dolan in a way that is not couth? And then there's the other side where you're like, wait a minute, something like is because Dolan is on one side, does it automatically make the other side right? And like I heard, when Ewing said what he said, for anybody who doesn't know, I don't know how you're going to describe it. He got at the podium after their semifinal win or their quarterfinal win, whatever.
I think it was their quarterfinal.
What? Yeah. Okay. Great.
Whichever.
And he said something to the effect of, I'm tired of security guards here at the Garden stopping me and asking for ID. They should know who I am. This is my house. And I'm like, there's a big part of me that heard that. I'm like, is that really the venue and the time and the whatever to do that? But then I'm like, he's Patrick fucking Ewing. So I say what you're going to say and then let's move on. But yeah, let's talk about it briefly.
I thought at first it was kind of tongue in cheek. Just the idea of,
oh, maybe. Okay.
Like, where he meant it. I always believe that there is a kernel of truth to every single joke. And so he doesn't put that out there just being like, haha, just, I don't mean it whatsoever. He meant it. He absolutely felt that he shouldn't have to be stopped at every corner. I'm sure that can be frustrating no matter what, especially if you have been recognized repeatedly in the past for the, the positive things you've contributed to that team, that arena. I also think maybe the fact that there are masks there, it's a little bit more challenging, perhaps. Obviously, you could say, well, like the dude's 6'10", and it's not too hard to figure out who that is, especially if you do your homework. Like, oh, there are all these people who are coming, and Patrick Ewing's one of them. But again, there are all these people that are going in and out of buildings. And again, it sucks that I kind of have to look to this person to say it. But Isola made an interesting point when he brought up that even James Dolan has had issues getting into his own building in the past. And I just don't think it's a personal thing. Look, I can't speak for Pat. Obviously, he did. He spoke for himself. But idea
think about what would have needed to take place for it to be personal. That would mean Dolan would have to go to his security people and be like, make sure when you see Patrick Ewing, fuck with him extra.
Exactly.
Like, that's like, we all know Dolan has his shit. That's no one. I'm not about. Well, neither of us are about to sit on here and defend James Dolan. That's not this podcast. But like, do we really think that's what's going on here?
Yeah, and for people who get their kicks off for all the like, oh my God, Knicks jokes, the LOL Knicks, whatever you want to call it. Like, first of all, the two are not necessarily connected, at least not directly, because this didn't really have anything to do with the Knicks. It had everything to do with James Dolan, who, owns a ton of arenas. He owns the Rangers. He's in real estate and entertainment. But the other thing is, it just goes to show how little there has been in terms of negative coverage on the Knicks, where it's like piranhas just, or smelling blood in the water of some sort, like a shark, finding this story and just running with it. Like I saw someone tweet about how it's like, haha, this is why, and he was a blue check Twitter personality of sorts, like saying, this is why Knicks fans don't deserve happiness, something along those lines. And it's just like, you're telling me that because of one incident that had to do with a security system, which isn't the Knicks at all. Like, yes, if you want to reevaluate the procedures and the protocol that is at MSG, that's worth doing. But to connect it to the basketball team, it's just a completely different situation. Because again, like, you wouldn't say, well, this is why the Rangers are losing right and left, even though they beat the Bruins the other day, which was nice. It's just like
Go Rangers.
You're putting it towards basketball and the Knicks because that's the easy move to make, and it's just not necessary. So I'm glad Pat won as well. That's really awesome. And I hope that he is certainly recognized more in MSG, but it just seemed like something that felt innocuous and just turned into something bigger, and we can hopefully move past it.
Yeah, I'd like to move past it. So let's do that right now. Sorry if you were expecting a half an hour on this what I think is a silly issue. Let's talk about the Knicks. I don't usually do this, but I want to start by asking our predictions last week. We only predicted the 2 games, right? So you took 1-1, didn't you?
I did.
You son of a bitch.
What did I take? Bold with the 2-0.
I said 2-0. Okay. I mean, what are we supposed to think after these 2 games? They came out and they played like absolute dog shit for one game, and then they came out and actually they did play like dog shit for about a quarter and a half, and then they're like, oh wait, we actually need to try against this team. And to the Knicks' credit, I watched. I don't know if you caught any of the game. We're recording this on Sunday at 5:15 right now. The Thunder played again today, second night of back-to-back against the Grizzlies. They had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander back, but they didn't have Lou Dort. Not that Lou Dort is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but Lou Dort looked pretty good to me. And they beat the Grizzlies by, I think the final score was like they beat them by 10 or more points. So, is it that embarrassing that they came out and they were down to the Thunder by, I think they were down 11 at one point and down 8 midway through the second quarter? No. I personally am taking from it that it was a more impressive win than it was an unimpressive start to the game. And I would very much like to leave the Bucks game to the side and just be like, it happened. It's a thing. How are you taking the start to the second half? About
even keeled, I mean, considering how I was expecting, I don't think I was expecting the Bucks to win by 33. I thought maybe it'd be a 15 game, maybe 20, but 33 is a lot. I think that with Randall, at the end of the day with him, he's admitted there are slow starts with him after long breaks. So it makes sense why he would be a little sluggish, and the Bucks happen to have a great player who can defend him with ease. And when you see other guys maybe not getting it going as much, then that's all a factor. But with the Thunder as well, it was definitely nice to see after, I think it was like 70% from the floor in the first quarter that they led up to the Thunder.
Sounds about right.
Recognizing, we are a better team than this. They are a team that has Lou Dort, Al Horford, and a lot of just young, unproven players. And it was really fascinating to see. I didn't watch the game, but I was following it a bit because I have a vested interest in teams around where the Mavericks are in the hopes that they win enough games where that Mavericks pick doesn't wind up being, like
God bless you,
a late first.
Whatever. I love your energy and your belief and your spirit where this pick is concerned.
Well, my spirit is definitely dampened at the idea of how easy their schedule has become. And if they can storm into a place like Denver and just control the game, but the Mavericks are a different story. For the Thunder, seeing Poku go off today after his miserable performance against the Knicks, it just kind of feels like, well, the Knicks caught a break in more ways than one. And it was adjustments that were made specifically in the second half and just keeping it together and creating this opportunity where it's like, I feel you're asking me how I feel after these 2 games, the same as I was before, more confused and less confused. I was expecting this result, but within the game itself, there were just areas where I'm like, I don't really know where we're left off, except for that I want to see more of Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Julius Randle together.
I think that's the takeaway for all of us. And I think we should say, like, look, we don't need another topic we don't need to talk about a lot on this podcast. Elfrid Payton, because who doesn't love to hear about Elfrid Payton? Like there are obviously a large subset of Knicks fans. I shouldn't even call them a subset. A majority, probably a majority, who would like to never see Elfrid Payton play basketball for the Knicks again. Except in this game, like, could you argue that maybe they could have used him a little bit? Maybe not. Frank had, he played 7 minutes. He was benched for the rest of the game. We'll touch on that later, but like they essentially played this game with I want to say kind of like a 7-man rotation, because if you take out Frank, which we didn't see him again after the first 7 minutes, at which point they had scored 7 points. And then on the bench, you had Burks and you had Taj Gibson. Like Toppin's minutes were, I was going through the film before, and again, we'll touch on him later too. Forgettable. So really, it's like they won this game with 7 guys. So I think that's impressive-ish, even against the Thunder on the road, afternoon game, different times on the whole thing. Like, I'll take it. Yeah.
And I mean, of those 7, the 3 that carried them were, one was an all-star and the other 2 were 21 and 20 years old. So it's great, and especially when you see a team like the Thunder where they're doing something a little similar. They're going through their own rebuild. It's a different situation. Yeah. They were missing more key pieces, I would argue, specifically their best player. And they also were without George Hill. And I think they were without Darius Bazley. Right.
They were without Bazley. Yeah.
Bazley. Thank you. So
Bazley. I don't know.
I think it is Bazley. So, but the idea of it being, like the Knicks are also somewhat depleted themselves, not having Mitchell Robinson was a key factor. They don't have Derrick Rose, and hopefully he's okay. He's been out for quite a bit of time, more so than other players who might be in the protocol. But again, it's like this ability to kind of rise up above that and get these necessary wins, because we've certainly talked about the schedule, and winning that Thunder game. I mean, losing it would have felt like a huge stab in the heart.
Oh, I actually, we don't need to talk about it because they won it, but like, had they lost that game and then lost these next 2, which we'll get to that, but it's again on the road in Brooklyn, and then without Durant, and then on the road in Philly without Embiid. So we'll see if maybe they could steal one of those. But boy, you want to talk about very, very quickly, no pun intended, flushing all the good vibes from the first half of the season down the toilet. I feel like now, is it possible if they get blown out in the next 2 games and look like they did against the Bucks? Is it possible we're sitting here next week and still talking about a similar situation? Absolutely. Let's stay positive and hope that it was more of a wake up call than anything. And like, I think they could lose the next 2 and it'd still be all right. But I think we're both in agreement that whether it's they win 12 games the rest of the season, or 14 or 16 or whatever it is, there just needs to continue to be that positivity, and we don't devolve into something other than positivity, right?
Yeah, and truthfully, the Knicks could get blown out against the Nets and the Sixers, and I'd still understand, because then you would look at the 4 games after the.
It depends how it happens. Like if those teams were like lighting it up, if Brooklyn came in and like lit it up from 3, right, and like Kyrie and Harden were like making shot after shot after shot. What can you do against that, right?
Right. I mean, well, KD went off against the Knicks the first time they played at MSG. So that was obviously, you're catching a break by not seeing him, but they're rolling pretty nicely. And the Sixers are still a very good team, even without Embiid. So I don't know, if I looking at the 4 games and feeling like, we went 0-4 against 3 of the best teams in the East, and the Thunder, who are trying to tank to their best of their abilities, but sometimes
they're screwing it up.
Yeah. Or versus the idea of like going 1-3, you had a great win in Oklahoma City, and the other 3 losses were against the top 3 teams in the East. So what do we expect? I'd love to see the Knicks beat the Sixers. I think honestly more than the Nets to a degree. And I know that some people might think, well, like that's silly. It's Brooklyn. Well, I would like to see Ben Simmons lose a game to the Knicks. That has never happened. So just seeing him seeing him lose once would be kind of nice, and would reinforce also with Philadelphia, like how good are they with or without Joel Embiid? We know how good they are with him, but without him for a longer stretch, just as a basketball fan, I'm very curious to see how they progress. So, these games, it's just, you take the good with the bad. I know that's kind of an empty statement, but it's nice to see at least the trajectory, of how
I was about to say trajectory. I kind of like that.
Projection and trajectory.
No, that's a great word. That should be a word if it's not.
Trajection. There we go.
Projection.
Yeah.
No, I like where you're at. Two quick things, and then this is actually a good transition to our progress report. In terms of where the Knicks are at, and like winning and losing, and like what the record's going to be, I just want to point out that right now, actually, I did this before the Thunder game today, and it obviously before of all of Sunday night's games as well. The net ratings for the NBA right now from 9 to 22, and the Knicks are 15 as I'm looking at this right now. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 teams are between a positive 1.2 and a negative 1.4. So essentially half the league is in this juicy middle where there's really like 2 or 3 games one way or the other. It's like you're and then I cut it off there because the Bulls are at the bottom of that with a negative 1.4. The team after them is the Pistons at negative 3.8. So big drop off. And then above the Memphis Grizzlies, who were before today again at plus 1.2, Philadelphia 76ers at plus 4.4. So big jump. So that's, the Knicks are in that group. They're not going to get out of that group. I don't think there's any trade that's going to get them out of that group. They are where they are. The other reason I'm excited to see the Sixers game is because last time these two teams played, second game of the season, Ben Simmons had his way with one Rowan. I always get this. Is Rowan Barrett Jr. Not I always want to say Rowan James Barrett.
Isn't Rowan Alexander Barrett Jr.? Rowan
Alexander Barrett Jr.
And then the J is the Rowan Jr., I think?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's right. Rowan Alexander Barrett Jr. That makes sense. But I don't know why I always want to throw James in there. Anyway, Simmons kind of shut him down that game. He was I think visibly frustrated by Simmons guarding him. And I want to see now them get a chance to play each other once again. Since as we start off our progress report, RJ Barrett is playing definitively the best basketball of his career, to the point that the last week and a half now that we have these additional 2 games of evidence on top of the great finish to the first half of the season. It's kind of making me reevaluate him as a prospect, as a play. Everything's up in the air now, and it's so wonderful. So yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, it's incredible. The ability, and this happened even last year too. It's harder to determine because of the sample sizes with COVID kicking in, but his difference between before the All-Star break and then after the All-Star break were night and day. And if we're seeing that, it's not even night and day to this degree because he was much better at the first half of this year than he was the first half of last year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But the opportunity where, yes, of course, it's only through 2 games, but his ability to just impact the game in so many ways. And it seems like you're seeing some sort of leap of its own right now is fantastic. I mean, the thing that stood out to me the most for the Thunder game was he went 9 of 12 at the rim, which for RJ is really important because he was very below average. He's certainly better this year, but his ability to work lower and as he gets stronger, and especially as he builds his case of being a good shooter and good player all over or all around, he'll get those calls. And so the misses that we might see are then lessened because, oh, hey, he's getting to the line even more. I think he went, 5 of 7 from the free throw line?
Yeah, and he's I'll pull up his free throw percentage in a second. I believe it's at 73% for the season.
Right.
Yeah, I'll get that right now.
And that's not great, but it's showing
72.1. Right. Yeah, I mean, look, he was at 60 in the low 60s last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I'm just I was, as you were talking, I'm pulling up. So for anybody who doesn't know, Cleaning the Glass, great website, has the ability for you to see a player's 10-game rolling average in like several different metrics. And if you look at RJ Barrett's effective field goal percentage from the start of the season until now, it's like not upward the whole time. There was a bit of a dip after, like right before that. the stretch of games that I want to say like ended with the Warriors game where he went. That was the game he went 1 for 8 or 1 for 9, right? So it was like the 5 or 6 or 7 games or so before that. It was a little bit of a dip, but for the most part, this has been on the way up the entire year. It's been really, really good. For anybody who doesn't know, by the way, RJ Barrett had a career high 32 points on Saturday. So I got a trivia question for you. You're not going to get this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So I grouped since January 1st, all players in the NBA, the National Basketball Association, who had taken at least 100 3-point attempts. And I noticed that Mr. Barrett is tied exactly with one other player who has taken the exact same amount of attempts and has the exact same amount of makes.
Can I get a hint?
Comes from a good family.
Comes from a good family. Is it the way you say it? I'm almost tempted to say one of the Ball brothers.
It's you're different, wrong brothers.
So it is a set of brothers, but not the Ball brothers.
Not Balls.
Is it the Holiday brothers?
Wow, you're really no. It's not the Holiday brothers.
There are too many brothers. It's not the Lopez brothers.
No, it's not the Lopez brothers. This person, so both Barrett and this person have taken since January 1st 107 3-point attempts and made 44 for a percentage of 41.1.
It's not an Antetokounmpo.
I can't. You're gonna. I mean, I'll just tell you.
I'm just running through all the brothers that are in this league, and I can't.
The disrespect. Okay, comes from a really good family.
I'm trying to think of these brothers. It's
not just the brothers. Dad too. Oh wow, you're just gonna. I'm just making you look bad. We're gonna have to edit this out.
That's all right. No, we'll keep it in, because the people need to see that I don't know everything. They should have known that before, but now they can see it with their own eyes and hear it with their own ears.
Was anybody listening to this podcast saying Jeremy knows? I thought Jeremy knew everything. No, that would be Seth Curry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, a little bit.
And Seth Curry had COVID too, so the fact that he's able to perform, he was struggling initially. That also goes to show how hot he was. That before his COVID, he was just on fire. So
yeah.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're both in that range. And then just looking at like the other guys, so guys immediately ahead of Barrett in these rankings, Jokic, and then a Holiday, oddly enough, Justin Holiday, Anthony Simons, good player, Jeff Green, Steph Curry, Gordon Hayward, Chris Middleton. And then if you're just, if you want to have some fun with it, we could go through the other stats like free throws, assists, rebounds. And sure enough, you look at the well-rounded game that RJ is showing. And I think I did this like across the columns. I'm like, who has at least this many of all of these different things? And at some point, I think it was just him, Jokic, and Middleton in terms of just across the board production since January 1st, which is like, these are the conversations. Like, he's not there yet, but it feels like he's on the come up, Yeah.
I remember there was some stat. It was like a compilation of things that it had in Middleton, Jokic, and I think Vucevic were the other guy that was involved. And it had something to do with the 3-point percentage, the points, rebounds, I think the assists as well, the field goal percentage as well. So, I mean, all this for a 20-year-old, it is impressive. One of my favorite things is seeing all of these cherry-picked stats involving RJ that are positive, because to me, it just makes my heart grow, because I love seeing a player on my team being able to do that. So I like the parameters. I don't really care. If you make him look good, I'll take it. But just seeing all of that in the company that he's with, it's hard not to think, well, with his work ethic and the team that they've built around him. And I don't just mean on the court. I mean the development staff that they have. And hopefully, of course, on the team as a whole with the personnel, the ability to make him better a year after having the worst spacing, I think, objectively in the NBA. Mm-hmm. It's tremendous. Not having to think of him as how do we build around RJ, but instead of how do we build with RJ in that sense? And that to me
there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
building with
not.
RJ as opposed to around RJ. It's just like
the context being like, okay, well, clearly this dude has some flaws. So how are we going to get around them with shooting being one of them? And now he's showing, well, he's at least showing signs of being an average shooter. And if you look at some of his percentages, there are signs of it being positive. Of course, he's not being efficient this year. He still has a way to go in terms of at the rim, but those are things that you can see improving over time. And we're seeing it in real time, especially with the 3-point percentage. He's finding open looks, but he's also finding the spots that he knows works for him. And he has a point forward in Randall who knows exactly where he'll be. That was another thing where before RJ got to 32, I think he was at 27 or 29, and RJ was standing in the corner. Randall was clearly looking at him, trying to get him the ball so he could get to 30.
Yeah.
And right as he's about to pass it, Randall's fouled right at the rim. So like having someone with that type of vision is crucial to his development, to the team's success, everything. So gotta love it with him.
We should say also, for as much as it felt last year like Randall was freezing, more Peyton than Randall for sure, but it also felt at times like Randall was freezing RJ out. 5 of Randall's 12 assists against the Thunder on Sunday went to RJ Barrett. You'll love to see it. Spoke after the game, which you alluded to, that he was trying to get RJ to 30. There is a kinship developing between those guys, and it's obvious. And then the one other thing I want to point out where RJ is concerned is he was asked on Friday by one of the beat guys about why he was taking less free throws this year. And his answer was that he's like, I'm not forcing it as much around the rim. I'm looking to do other stuff, which is like that's okay. That's an acceptable answer. I do still feel like that is the next step in his progression I want to have my cake and eat it too. Be selective, but also when you're down there, learn how to get calls more. But whatever, it's fine. He's a 20-year-old, which is why, for as much as like, yes, a lot of these cherry pick stats are there, but they're not like random, like, this player has played this many minutes and has like this, many like offensive rebounds at like this height or so, like nonsense. Like there's meaningful stuff. And then when you look at the age related stats, I would say, well, those don't mean as much, except for the fact that we are now seeing real progress from 19 to 20. So the fact that he is just 20 and we have just seen the progress means it is okay to project more progress at 21, 22, 20. It's all good. There's nothing bad. Let's hit a couple other guys real quick. Quickly, another 20-point game. You want another quiz?
Let's do it. Hopefully I'll get this one right.
You're not going to get this one.
Great. Okay. I'm bracing for 0-2, but at least I'll feel better about this one, maybe.
You will. I don't know. You probably won't. So this was Emmanuel Quickly's 35th game. I'm stealing something from tomorrow's newsletter, but what the hell? This was his 35th career game, and in those 35 career games, this was his 8th game off the bench, because all of them have been off the bench, scoring 20 or more. I'll give you an easy version of the question. What rank is that throughout NBA history in terms of rookies, first 35 games, how many games scoring 20 or more off the bench?
How many are there in total, just for context?
Well, no. So he has 8. So I'm asking you, is that like first place ever? Is that third place ever? Is that 10th place ever? Yeah.
Very long list. I'm going to say...
Like, how many guys do you think have scored more than 8 20-point games off the bench in their first 35 games as a pro?
As a rookie, I think it's probably a very small amount. So let's go with 5th.
He is second, tied for second. So the only player with more is the immortal Jeff Ruland, 2-time All-Star Jeff Ruland, once traded for Moses Malone, and Quickly is tied for second place with 2 other players, John Long, who's not a player I'm familiar with, and Rex Chapman, another Kentucky guy, who was not a bad comp. And he's listened to some of the players who are just below him. Ben Gordon, remember him? Tyler Hero, not a terrible name. Tyrese Halliburton has 5, so he's a little bit further down the list. Kuzma, Reggie Miller is on this list. Reggie Miller came off the bench to start his career. So it's like, you see some of these names, and it's kind of cool. Just
I think being grouped with Long John Silver in anything is pretty awesome. But
you got me with that one.
yeah,
I just
that's a good list. One of those names I particularly despise. Not quite in the level that I'm sure you do, because I was barely alive when it happened. With
no one, he's always going to be my least favorite basketball player.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? Someone's coming to say hi. So I'm gonna, as I try to occupy my daughter for a moment. Do you want to say anything about Frank and Obi for a sec?
Sure. I would say that with Obi, just didn't really have it. These 2 games just did not work out for him. It was pretty much overmatched. The Milwaukee game was just a game to forget completely for him. And you hope, obviously, to see him get more minutes as the season, or at least this week, moves on. But
do we?
I don't know if he's going to get that opportunity, especially as games get tighter and tighter as the season goes on. I'm like, does his leash get longer when you are likely to endure more losses? Because I don't think it does.
I just have to say, he's at the point where he's waving to you. You could wave to him. Obi's at the point where it's starting to, like, watching him. For me at least, I'm watching these minutes and I'm actively asking myself, is he helping us win games right now with his minutes? And then I ask myself, would Kevin Knox be helping them win these games more if he was given those minutes instead of Obi? And then I'm like, well, obviously Knox is not going to get those minutes because Knox is yesterday's stale bread, and Obi Toppin was picked 8th in the draft, however many months ago. And then I'm like, well, but that's okay. You want to invest in the guy you just picked 8th in the draft. And then I go back again and I'm like, well, how old is Kevin Knox again versus how old? And then this is where we don't want to be. This is the bad place. This is not, and it's just all bad. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, well, I was actually just, before we started recording, watching some of Last Chance U, the basketball on Netflix. I don't know if you have time, considering you have a family and a newborn.
Oh, I thought I was on mute when she was. Sorry about that.
No, there's nothing to apologize for. But the idea of seeing these kids who are in JUCO.
I haven't watched it yet, but I want to. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard not to look at them. And obviously Obi did not have quite that path, but given the fact that he's 23 years old and he's a rookie, and these guys are all, they have to be in community college for 2 years in the hopes to get a scholarship of some sort. So it just kind of, it makes you maybe just a little bit more sympathetic to the time that it takes for a player like Obi. But I don't see him getting the necessary time that it would take right now, because I'm sure that while they do care about his development, they're more willing to sacrifice, a few games of time that he might have, because they're more interested in having a playoff push. And they could say, well, he can develop by being in a playoff like atmosphere for a play-in. But other than that, I don't really know what opportunities he'll have. I think he'll play. It's just, I don't think his role is going to be quite as known for quite some time.
Emmanuel Quickley is clearly going to benefit long-term for his career by being in the environment that hopefully he is going to be in for the rest of this year. There is zero question about that, because when Emmanuel Quickley goes out there, even if he is actively making mistakes, even if he is actively having dreadful games like we've seen him have on occasion this year, where he's gone 1 for 10 on whatever it's been, those will be invaluable minutes versus if he was on a team like the Cavs playing for fuck nothing this year. Obi, if he has those minutes and he's still in this offensive role, that's not, we all know this is not his long-term offensive role. Whether him getting more exposure to like spotting up for three is in his long-term best interest, maybe we could have that conversation, but like him going out there and kind of flailing, defensively and just kind of being out of sorts, like, again, it's okay. Let him work through it. It's 10, 12 minutes a game. It's not, we can't look at any game and say Obi Toppin's minutes caused them to lose that game. So I'm not, and even if such a game did happen, it's not the end of the world, but it's just, something to pay attention to moving forward. And it was on my mind, which is why I, wanted to talk about it. Should we finish up as we've already gone past where we said we were going to be?
Just one quick thing about Frank, I guess.
Oh yeah, Frank. Sorry. Oh my God.
The forgotten man.
I'm like, I'm like Tibbs. I forgot about Frank. If Tibbs forgot to put him back in the game, I forgot about Frank.
Yeah. You know, I was talking with Chris Persianen yesterday during halftime, and he'd asked about, is Frank squandering an opportunity? And I said, no, I don't think he is, just because he's an emergency point guard. That's not his role. It's pretty clear that he's not going to be a lead ball handler. But then afterwards, I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, well, I mean, here's the thing. He didn't have a productive afternoon. It wasn't great that he had to go to the bench with 2 quick fouls. And of course, the Knicks were able to piece it together otherwise. And then the game, I'm blanking on the game where he drew the quick foul. It was Milwaukee, wasn't it? Where he drew the quick foul at the end of the first quarter.
Oh, yes.
And then he missed the free throws, and like those kind of things and then he was held scoreless for the rest of the night. So it's not like he's missing the opportunity to be a point guard, because that ship has sailed. It's more the idea of what can he continue to do to carve out a role, because as much as I know you love him, it's this thought process of, okay, well, we're right now 11 days away from the trade deadline. Is he a piece that another team might want? And I'd love to keep him here. I'd love to have him long term. But if he's not here moving forward, then I would like to get something out of the former 8th overall pick than nothing. So,
he could be the former 48th overall pick. It wouldn't make a damn differse.
Exactly. It's more just the idea of wanting to take that value and turn it into something. But Frank is no longer that pick. He is Frank. That's what he's become.
This may be unfair, but it sure does feel like when he starts, it doesn't usually go well.
Yeah,
as a point guard, when he starts as a point guard, which is, I think, pretty much all we've ever seen him start. I don't think he's ever really started as some meaningless games here and there.
Wasn't it the first? I mean, going way back, like the first game or two seasons ago, when it was
Oh yes, yeah.
Where he was starting in the wing for a few games,
when he started the bench, starting small forward Frank. How can I forget it? Yep. And who was the starting? Trey Burke. Yeah, Trey Burke started point guard. That's right. We'll see. If nothing else, and for anybody who doesn't know, Tibbs went with quickly to start the second half on Saturday. It is so blatantly obvious at this point that Tibbs is not keeping Quickly out of the starting lineup because he doesn't believe in him or doesn't think he's going to be a helpful player. He wants him to be able to prop up that bench unit. And you saw it in the second half with how Tibbs distributed the minutes, because he was really scratching and clawing to make sure he always kept 2 of, I'm not 100% sure if this is the case, but it felt like 2 of RJ, Quickly, and Randall were always on the court for that second half. Or if it wasn't, it was, maybe a 30-second stretch here or there. Okay, speaking of Randall, now we could finish up. So I wanted to have a very, very quick discussion. We're not anywhere close to being there yet, but I was thinking about All-NBA this week, because over the last several days, and full disclosure, Brian Windhorst's Hoop Collective podcast made me think about this, because they just had a whole discussion about how Kevin Durant and Anthony Davis are both still going to be out for a while. So Davis is going to get reevaluated in it's actually 2 weeks from yesterday, or 2 weeks from Saturday. So he will miss at a minimum 24 games this season. So that is a third of the year. Kevin Durant, as we sit here right now, has already missed 20 games this season and is going to get, I believe it's reevaluated later this week, something to that effect. So why do I bring this up on a Knicks podcast? Because Julius Randle, I do believe, is competing for an All-NBA spot, and those guys are both forwards who are ostensibly competing with him. And I'm just wondering if it's getting to the point where how many games do those guys need to miss for them to for a voter to look at the situation and be like, shit, Randall's clearly the Knicks' best player. He's played every game. He doesn't have. There's no James Harden, Kyrie Irving, or LeBron James on the Knicks. I don't know. And then last thing before I turn it over to you to get your thoughts on this, I think Kawhi, Giannis, and LeBron are 100% safe. I think Paul George pretty safe. What do you right? Paul George probably safe,
so. Especially because the record and he plays with Kawhi.
Yeah,
maybe more like third team, but yes.
Yeah. So then that leaves Randall. Let's put AD and KD to the side for a second. I think that leaves Randall fighting it out with Tatum, Jimmy Butler, and Zion.
And I think you could maybe throw in Sabonis as well. I wouldn't. I think that Randall is ahead of Sabonis, but I could see that idea of him being
right now. He's ahead of him, but if things could, Well, here's the thing: if he doesn't play as well as Sabonis the rest of the year, then he's not in contention. I'm trying to imagine a scenario where, let's say, he plays at the current level he's been at all year, or maybe even a little bit better. I think this is a real discussion. That's all I wanted to make the point of. I think this is a real conversation.
Yeah. The other question, of course, is the idea of positions, because, is Luka Doncic going to be considered a guard?
He was a guard on the All-Star ballot.
Right. Then
same with Simmons.
Perfect. So, right. Yeah. So if those guys are not considered forwards, then that's a huge, step in the right direction for someone like Randall. But that's the thing. I don't know what Randall can necessarily do unless it's the Knicks winning. And I don't say that to begrudge Randall. It's just this idea of where I feel like Randall, it's this level of respect that's almost kind of absent, where I don't know, for us, it feels like, obviously Randall's made this huge jump, but just from where I'm sitting, it just doesn't feel like there has been that much excitement about who Randall is and what he's been able to accomplish. And with all that being said, it's like, well, why not? The transformation he's had at the age of 26 years old feels like he should be in that spot. But I think that the voters just, they very much go by name brand and recognition. And they feel like the best players,
I agree,
are the ones who have the biggest names because they carry the sport. And to me, it's like, well, how is Julius Randle going to sneak in to the third spot when someone like Zion is elevated to starting the All-Star game when I don't think he necessarily should have? So the league has thrust these players into our faces to such a degree where it doesn't feel like Randall can elevate his case, even though he's doing such a great job. And that is what concerns me about him being on the ballot.
I agree with you. I think if I was to put a percentage chance on it right now, I would put it at like 5%, if I'm being honest, because I think so much like AD and KD would need to basically miss even more. Because I think, honestly, if like Durant came back and he only missed a third of the season, I think he would get in over Randall, even if Randall played every game.
Yeah. Just look at how he was performing even before Harden came along. He was an MVP caliber player.
Yes, 100%.
Just a matter of now how they weigh super teams, but they haven't had a problem weighing super teams in the past with the Warriors.
And we've seen All NBA in the past, guys who are at the top echelon get that benefit of the doubt. And Durant is there and Anthony Davis is there. So they need to miss a lot more games. Zion would probably need to get rested, and basically the Pelicans would need to fall out of it, and then they would maybe sit Zion down the stretch to preserve his 375-pound frame. And I think one of either the Heat or the Celtics would need to have like a disastrous second half of the season and just kind of like fell out of the playoff race. And the Knicks would need to finish with like the 6 seed or the 5 seed. And Randall, led so much would need to happen. Then
the Wizards, I'm pretty confident, are going to finish with a worse record than the Knicks. And
but that's he's
good. Right. But it's the position factor, which again, I think is kind of dumb in itself, but also that's the star factor of it where you have.
I wonder if he gets in, Beal.
I think you will.
Could we do this real quick? Are we allowed to just talk very briefly about this? Hold on.
Course.
I'm going to pull up my, you know me, I love this shit. Hold on. I'm pulling up my standings. So automatics, as of right now are Luka, Steph, Dame, Harden, right? Those 4 are automatic.
I think so.
Okay. Yep. Kyrie, not an automatic. Ben Simmons, Ben Simmons, not an automatic.
Has Jimmy Butler been a guard or a
forward? That's the part of the problem. Right. He's going to be competing with Randall. You got both Phoenix guys. You got Donovan Mitchell. Like, are they really?
I don't know about that though. I'm really not sure if Donovan Mitchell's going to get that spot. And the funny thing is, the last time I checked, the Jazz actually perform worse with him on the court than they do off. But here's the thing. They are elite when he is on the court, and they are even more elite when he's off the court. So
if the Wizards are a bottom 5 team and the Jazz have the best record in the league, you really think they're not gonna?
I don't know.
Unless they give one of the center spots, which they probably will,
to Gobert.
They give their team center to Gobert.
People just don't care about Utah. That's the thing. Whether it's right or wrong, even LeBron said it himself. There was a reason the last 2 players picked were
that was so shitty,
Utah.
by the way. I can't believe he actually said those words. I could see him getting it. I think he'll probably wind up competing with Kyrie and Donovan Mitchell, and I actually think he would probably get in over here's the thing. Here's another one. If Phoenix is second best in the West, I think as of right now they have the third best record in the league.
Yeah.
You're not going to give them one of the All-NBA spots?
If Chris Paul, I can see Chris Paul getting over Devin Booker in the sense where Chris Paul, whether he's better or not, I disagree. I think that Booker is right now the better player where their careers are, but you could say like, well, the Suns were a Chris Paul away from being what they are. And so as a result, then it's kind of like, well, we gave third All-NBA to Chris Paul. He is the head of the association in terms of the NBPA.
Yeah.
The pride that he would have in being named to the third team again. I could see it because Booker was an injury replacement and everyone went crazy over it. And they didn't even want to play.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a fun rest of the year. Okay. We've talked for a while. This was good. A lot of fun stuff. Predictions. Okay. So we only need to predict this week. And this week, the New York Knickerbockers play. All right. Monday at Brooklyn. Tuesday at oh my God. Fucking brutal. Monday at Brooklyn. Tuesday at Philly. Thursday, Orlando at home. And then let's do Sunday because let's do Sunday in case we record before that. Philadelphia at home. Embiid will still be out for that one. So we got a 4-game. Yes. What's up?
Can I press the ice button?
Can you press the ice button?
Yeah.
If you could figure out how to do that, sure.
The ice
button. And now you got 2 of them.
Now I got two. Man. And boy, does one of them poop a lot. Let me tell you. But I'm told that is what they do. Okay. Everybody that's the name of a book.
Yes, it is.
Actually, I was in Target the other day. I came across a book, the title of which was something along the lines of like, what are these funny sounds coming out of my butt? It's something absurd like that. And I took a picture of it and I texted it to my dad and I said, somebody wrote a book about you. Anyway, you go first with your prediction. I'm going to go 1.
You
were thinking about saying 1. Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, look, I can't go 0-4. But those Orlando games are deceptively tough. Orlando has been the ultimate trap team, in my opinion, this year. For both games, they've either been...
but they owe them one now, and they're at home for this.
True, which is why I think that's ultimately the game they win. But
see, here's what I was about to say. You did me a favor because I would have been choosing between 1-3 and 2-2. Here's what's dangerous about that. If they win if they lose Brooklyn and win the first Philly game, then Orlando's a prime letdown game. And then you have to face Philly again, who's coming off just having lost to you. And that's if they actually beat Philly. If they start off 0-2 versus Brooklyn and Philadelphia, then it's like, yeah. So, I mean, I'll take 2-2. I'm happy to take 2-2. But I think 1-3 was probably the smart play.
Well, I hope you win. In fact, I hope the Knicks go 4-0 and then your 2-2 record looks, perfect because you just edged me on that one. So
I'm just looking ahead. How the fuck do we go back to Milwaukee again?
I know.
Come on. Jesus. Okay. Anyway. All right. Anything else from you before we get out of here?
No, I think that's all for today.
All right. It's 5:50. We said we were going to go less time, I think, than we did, but we still got out of here under an hour. It's pretty good for us.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, minor accomplishment. You take what we can get. All right, I'm gonna go see what mess my daughter is making in the other room. Everybody out there, thank you for listening to another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Andrew's not here to remind me, so I will remind myself. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, rate, give us a review if you have kind words to say. If not, then do something else. 5 stars, yes, five.
Channeling my inner Andrew. I'm sure he's at this point when he's editing, he's just like, God, John, say it. So,
5. But isn't that implied that you want the 5 star?
I think it is, but okay. I could see somebody like, all right, well, he told me to write a review, so 2 stars.
That's fair. Okay, so 5 stars, write a good review. And most of all, thank you for giving us your time and your attention, and we will be back with you another episode next week.